even our marriages and our churches. All of us in here are very familiar with evil. I think belonging to the kingdom opens up a whole new understanding of the difference between good and evil, and being a part of God's kingdom reveals that to us. And so I think we're all very familiar with that. And for this sermon, I want you to think about an enemy that you have, someone who has caused you injustice or harmed you. Basically, that's how we're defining enemy today. Someone that has been unjust to you, has insulted you, stole something from you, harmed you in any way like that. And think about that while we explore this passage. And one thing I want to clarify too is that this passage isn't about foreign policy, it's not about government, it's not about military or different wars that we're fighting. This is about us, you, me, and God, and the way that we react and interact together with the secular world, even when they're being evil to us. To begin, in verse 17, Paul delivers us a reiteration of what Jesus tells us in the Gospels to love those who persecute us. And then a reiteration of Deuteronomy in chapter 23 says simply, do not pay back evil for evil. He's just saying stop. We need to stop. We as Christians have an opportunity to start a new cycle of love and forgiveness. But that cannot begin until we stop the old cycle of evil. And so Paul, 2,000 years ago, understood as well as we do that this violence has to end. And we are the only ones that are capable with God's love and power to do this. The Amish people knew this in their situation. The parents were, of course, crushed, the families were shaken beyond recognition, and this community was forcefully thrusted into immense sorrow. But if you'll read the reports, you'll notice what didn't happen. And what didn't happen was hatred. What didn't happen was vengeance. And what didn't happen was a plan of seeking their own justice and trying to figure out why this happened. What the Amish did was they stopped the cycle of violence and hatred right there. And they started the new cycle of love and forgiveness. And as we explore this, you'll see further on how this played out. In verse 17b and 18, Paul says, respect what is right in the eyes of everyone. So far as it is in your control, be at peace with all people. Now, when I personally think of the Amish, and I have my own stereotypes, good stereotypes, I think of a peaceable community. It's very interesting in many ways. They, horse and buggy, interesting clothing. The last thing I could connect with the Amish people is the idea of a vengeful Rambo type that's going to pursue his own vengeance. Now, I think that if we were to ask other people throughout the world too, they'd probably have the same stereotype. And I think this is a direct result of what the Amish have done. So basically, they've done what's right in the eyes of all people. This doesn't mean that they've done a relativistic good in doing what everyone thinks is right. It means that they have done what God thinks is right, and they've done it so that everyone can see. And I think it's a very profound thing that everyone who sees what they do and how they act recognizes truth. Because I think that God's truth is recognized to everyone universally, and this is a good example of that. Now we see in verses 17 and 18 that we are called out of the world in this manner. We are called out of the chilling and destructive cycle that plagues our world. But what are we called into as Christians? In verse 20 we have the ever-popular command, but if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him drink. For in so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. Now this command is pretty straightforward. In the context it was written, it could be taken literally to give someone literal food and literal water. People had a need for food and water, and they fulfilled that. But he's basically using this, first of all quoting Deuteronomy, but using it to show a higher expression of love, a way of showing your enemy that you are willing to love to the degree of filling their need without any kind of ulterior motive. So despite what we might be tempted to say it does actually mean just to help those who are evil to you. It's the same principle that Jesus tells us to have as praying for our persecutors.